is a book that I would say is probably a little bit for older children because it is kind of lengthy. And it's called Buy Lupus Helps Tell Scott's Story about a disease called lupus. And this little boy Scott has lupus, and with the help of his friends, family, and teachers, he wrote this book to help tell people about lupus. And I guess if you wanted to read this to a younger child, you could just read the parts of the story that is like Scott talking and Scott telling his story. And you could probably skip the Buy Lupus part, because there's this little character called Buy Lupus, and in the sides of each page it has information about lupus. Like the Buy Lupus gives information about lupus, and I think for younger children that part just kind of is too in depth and it goes over their heads. So, and so I'm going to read both parts just to give you the idea. And so this is Scott's story. Hi, my name is Scott. I'm a regular kid just like you. Like all kids, I am very special. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. I'm 9 years old and a third grader at New Eagle Elementary School. I like school except for the homework. I like all sports and play on baseball and lacrosse teams. I have lots of friends. We laugh and play just like you do. My favorite food is popcorn. I live with my mother, father, sister, and brother. And at our house we have 2 pets. We have one hamster named Coco and a bunny named Holly. You see, I am a regular kid like you. And just like you, there are many things about me that make me special. Oh, there is one more very important thing that is special about me I think you should know. I am a kid with a disease called lupus. I was diagnosed with lupus when I was in the 2nd grade. Since then, I have become an expert on lupus. Most people don't know much about lupus, so I'm going to tell you my story with help from my little friend, Buy Lupus. Hi, I'm Buy Lupus, and I'm going to tell you about Scott and the disease he has called lupus. Lupus is a hard disease to explain because it doesn't affect all people who have it the same way. I have systemic lupus erythematosus, and it makes me feel tired and sometimes my knees and elbows hurt. Most people with lupus are super sensitive to the sun, so I always wear a hat and sunscreen when I play outside. And this is the part where the information comes in. Systemic lupus erythematosus, called lupus or SLE, is an autoimmune disease, and that means Scott's immune system gets confused and attacks healthy cells in Scott's body. It's kind of like a soccer game that's gone crazy. Instead of the players protecting their own goal, they actually turn against their own team. They attack their own teammates and try to score on their own goal. Lupus can affect the skin, connective tissues, and organs such as the heart, lungs, kidneys, or brain. Though it is not known yet why some people like Scott have lupus, it is not a contagious disease. Scott's friends know they cannot get lupus from him. Some people think it's caused by a combination of genetic predisposition, although it's not actually considered a genetic disease, and other diseases Scott may have had, and the environment. Research about lupus is being done to find out why it occurs. Through research, hopefully a cure will soon be found. It is not Scott's fault that he has lupus. He didn't do anything wrong. He just has it. There are 2 types of lupus, discoid or cutaneous lupus and systemic lupus. Discoid lupus affects only the skin and is usually found on the face and scalp. Systemic lupus can affect one's organs, nervous system, joints, and skin. Scott has systemic lupus. Healthy people make antibodies that attack germs and protect their bodies from disease and infections. People with lupus make antibodies that attack their own cells, and these antibodies are called autoantibodies. Lupus causes Scott to have sore knees and ankles. Sometimes his elbows and shoulders hurt too. The doctors also found lupus in his kidneys. He gets tired easily and needs to rest often. Like most people with lupus, Scott's skin is sensitive to the sun. He has photosensitivity, and whenever he goes out in the sun, he needs to wear a hat and sunscreen. When I was little, I seemed to be just fine, but one day I came home from school and everything was different. My knees and ankles hurt. I had trouble running and playing with my friends. I was tired and couldn't do my homework because I didn't feel well. I had a fever and felt achy all over. My mom also noticed that I had lost some weight. Mom immediately took me to the doctor's office. She and the doctors knew right away that I was sick, but they didn't know what was wrong until they did some special tests. There is not just one test that shows someone has lupus, so doctors do many tests. One of the most common tests is a blood test where the doctors take some blood and look at it under a microscope. Like most people with lupus, Scott's doctors found he had problems with his immune system. His white blood cells were destroying other healthy white blood cells. The doctors finally said that Scott had lupus. The doctors checked my blood, heart, lungs, and kidneys. They found out my spleen was enlarged and that I didn't have enough red blood cells. My kidneys were leaking protein and blood into my urine. Lupus can tell you about these parts of my body and why they are so important. Everyone's body is like a machine. Each part has a purpose and parts need to work together to have the machine work right. These are the parts of the body Scott was telling you about. Blood. Blood is a liquid that travels through your body. It takes oxygen and nutrients to your tissues and waste away from your tissues. Blood is made of red blood cells and white blood cells. Red blood cells have iron in them and carry oxygen, and white blood cells attack germs and protect the body from disease. Your heart is an organ that pumps blood through your body. Your body has 2 kidneys, and they take waste from your blood, which becomes your body's urine. Lungs. You have 2 lungs. This is where the exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide occurs. Your lungs give your blood the oxygen it needs. It also takes away the blood's waste, which is called carbon dioxide. The spleen is an organ where red blood cells are made. It helps to filter the blood and gives it antibodies, which fight germs. The doctors gave me a special medicine called prednisone. At first I had to take a lot of it, but now I don't need to take as much. I never forget to take it because I know it's helping me to feel better. The medicine helps my joints feel better and it even helps my kidneys too. I hope that someday I won't need to take it anymore. Prednisone is a corticosteroid. Steroids are used to treat the inflammation or swelling sometimes found in lupus patients. Scott had to take a high dose of prednisone to help reduce the swelling in his spleen and inflammation in his joints. It also helps his kidneys. When his lupus symptoms are stabilized and goes into remission, he will need less medicine. Steroids can cause a patient's bones to lose calcium. Calcium is needed to help build healthy bones. Because Scott has to take steroids, it's important for him to take calcium pills and have a good diet. Another side effect of prednisone is weight gain. The medicine makes Scott very hungry. At first, some people thought Scott looked really different, but Scott and his friends and family quickly got used to it. The prednisone sometimes makes him tired yet hyperactive. These side effects should all change when Scott is able to take less prednisone. Sometimes people with lupus have to take medicines for other problems, and some of these medicines have long names and are hard to say, like non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, antimalarials, and immunosuppressants. Usually my doctors examine me and help me right in their offices, but one time I had to stay overnight in a hospital for some extra tests on my kidneys. Fortunately, my mom stayed right with me in the hospital. She even slept in my room. The next day I went home and rested. I had to wait a few days before I could wrestle my brother or play rough sports and games with my friends. Now I can do almost everything everyone else can do. Scott went to the hospital so the doctors could take a close look at his kidneys. They looked at his kidneys with a machine called an ultrasound and then took a biopsy of one kidney by putting a needle into his back and taking out a small sample of kidney cells. The doctors looked at Scott's kidney cells under different kinds of microscopes. This way they were able to learn more about Scott and his disease. Scott was asleep during the whole operation and woke up about an hour later. At first he was not very happy because it really hurt, but the nurses understood and gave him special medicine which helped him feel much better. And though he had to wait to play rough games, Scott was back at school in just a few days.